May 8, 1942, the Coral Sea, east of Australia. The aircraft carrier USS Lexington maintains combat patrol. Lexington is one of the most powerful American warships in the Pacific Ocean. Lexington carries 60 aircraft on her flight deck. Lexington has a crew of 1,300 sailors. Lexington represents the symbol of American naval power in the Pacific. Lexington is the reason the American Navy can challenge Japanese naval supremacy. But Lexington's dominance will end today. Japanese reconnaissance aircraft spot USS Lexington. Japanese pilots report the carrier's position. Japanese commanders receive the report. Japanese admirals make a decision: attack. Japanese dive bombers launch from their own carriers. Japanese torpedo bombers launch from their own carriers. Japanese fighters launch to provide cover. The Japanese air armada flies toward Lexington's position. Lexington's radar detects the incoming Japanese aircraft at 90 kilometers distance. Lexington's captain, Frederick C. Sherman, receives the alert. Sherman orders general quarters. The alarm sounds throughout the ship. All hands to battle stations. All hands prepare for attack. The ship's anti-aircraft guns rotate skyward. The ship's fighter aircraft launch to intercept the incoming Japanese planes. American Wildcats climb to altitude. American Wildcats engage Japanese dive bombers. The first phase of the battle occurs above the ocean. Japanese and American aircraft clash in the sky above Lexington. Some Japanese planes are shot down. Some American planes are shot down. Some Japanese planes break through the American fighter defense. Some Japanese planes succeed in reaching Lexington. The dive bombers come in steep. The pilots angle their aircraft nearly vertical. The pilots fly directly at the carrier. At the last moment, the pilots release their bombs. The bombs fall from the sky. The bombs descend toward the flight deck. The bombs descend toward the hull. Anti-aircraft guns fire frantically at the dive bombers. The anti-aircraft guns succeed in some cases. The anti-aircraft guns fail in other cases. The first bomb misses. The second bomb misses. The third bomb strikes the flight deck. The explosion engulfs the deck in smoke and fire. American sailors are killed instantly. American sailors are burned. American sailors are thrown across the deck by the force of the explosion. But the dive bombers are not finished. The dive bombers are only the first wave. The torpedo bombers come next. The torpedo bombers approach from the starboard side. The torpedo bombers fly lower, only 50 meters above the ocean surface. The torpedo bombers release their torpedoes. The torpedoes enter the water. The torpedoes run toward Lexington. Lexington's defensive nets are deployed. The nets are designed to catch torpedoes. The nets work in some cases. The nets fail in other cases. The first torpedo strikes the net and explodes. The net absorbs the impact. The second torpedo strikes Lexington's hull directly. The torpedo explodes. The explosion tears open the hull. Water pours into the interior of the ship. Water floods the engine compartments. Water floods the ammunition magazines. Water floods the crew quarters. Captain Sherman watches the damage reports come in. Damage reports indicate catastrophic structural failure. Damage reports indicate that multiple compartments are flooding. Damage reports indicate that the damage control teams are overwhelmed. Damage reports indicate that USS Lexington may not survive this attack. Fire spreads throughout the ship. Fire spreads from the flight deck downward into the interior. Fire consumes the fuel storage areas. Fire reaches the ammunition storage. Explosions occur inside the ship. The ship trembles from internal explosions. Smoke pours out of ventilation shafts. Smoke rises above the ocean. Smoke is visible from dozens of kilometers away. Sherman makes a decision that defines his legacy. Sherman decides that if Lexington cannot be saved, Lexington must be destroyed. Better to scuttle the ship than allow the ship to be captured by the Japanese. Better to destroy Lexington than allow the Japanese to salvage the ship and study American naval technology. But before Sherman issues the order to scuttle, before Sherman issues the order to abandon ship, before Sherman issues the order that will end USS Lexington's service, Sherman thinks. Sherman thinks deeply about what Lexington's loss means. Sherman thinks about the strategic situation in the Pacific. Sherman thinks about how few American aircraft carriers remain operational. Sherman knows that American naval power in the Pacific depends on aircraft carriers. Sherman knows that Japanese naval power is superior. Sherman knows that the only way Americans can compete with Japanese naval power is through aircraft carriers and aircraft. Sherman knows that losing another carrier will gravely damage American capability. Sherman knows that USS Yorktown, another American aircraft carrier, was damaged in a previous battle and is now in dock in Pearl Harbor. Yorktown requires months of repairs. Yorktown will not be combat ready for months. And then Sherman has a thought that seems impossible, a thought that seems insane, a thought that transforms from impossible idea into operational possibility. Sherman thinks, what if Lexington could be salvaged? What if Lexington could be repaired? What if Lexington could be rebuilt? What if Lexington could be made to look like Yorktown? What if American forces could present a falsified Yorktown to Japanese intelligence? What if Japanese intelligence could be deceived into believing Yorktown is back in combat when Yorktown is actually still in repairs? Sherman immediately recognizes both the brilliance and the danger of this idea. If the deception works, American naval power is preserved. If the deception fails, American forces have wasted resources on a futile repair effort. If the deception is discovered, American credibility is damaged. But if the deception succeeds, American forces gain months of additional aircraft carrier capability. Sherman orders, do not scuttle. Attempt to save the ship. All hands focus on damage control. All hands focus on stopping the flooding. All hands focus on saving USS Lexington. The damage control teams work for hours. The teams work with desperate intensity. The teams work knowing that every moment counts. The teams work knowing that if the ship continues to flood, the ship will be lost. The teams seal compartments. The teams activate emergency systems. The teams divert power. The teams reroute water circulation. The teams work with American ingenuity and American determination. By late afternoon, the fires are brought under control. By late afternoon, the flooding is slowed. By late afternoon, USS Lexington remains afloat. USS Lexington remains damaged, but USS Lexington is not lost. Sherman receives the reports. Sherman knows that Lexington requires extensive repairs. Sherman knows that Lexington cannot return to combat immediately. Sherman knows that Lexington must be towed back to Pearl Harbor. Sherman knows that Lexington must be placed in dock. But Sherman also knows something else. Sherman knows that news of Lexington's survival must not be released. Sherman knows that Japanese intelligence must believe Lexington is sunk. Sherman knows that if Japanese intelligence believes Lexington is sunk, Japanese forces will not spend effort searching for a dead ship. Sherman knows that if Japanese intelligence believes Lexington is dead, then Lexington can be secretly reborn as Yorktown. Sherman gives the order. All personnel are to maintain absolute silence about Lexington's survival. This information is classified. This information is secret. This information will not be disclosed. USS Lexington sank in the Coral Sea. That is the official story. That is the story that will be released to the press. That is the story that Japanese intelligence will believe. But in the secrecy of American naval commands, a different story unfolds. In the secrecy of Pearl Harbor, Lexington arrives in dock. In the secrecy of the repair facilities, American shipwrights and engineers begin the most audacious deception of the Pacific War. They begin to transform USS Lexington into USS Yorktown. They begin to paint the ship with new identification numbers. They begin to install new nameplates. They begin to change the identity of the ship. They begin to make one dead ship into a living ghost. They begin to make USS Lexington disappear and USS Yorktown reappear. They begin to change history before the history is even finished being written. May 15, 1942, Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. USS Lexington sits in dry dock. The ship is broken. The ship is scarred. The ship shows the evidence of combat. Multiple sections of the hull are damaged. Multiple sections are patched with temporary welding. Multiple sections show burn marks from fires that have been extinguished. The flight deck is cratered from bomb impacts. The superstructure is twisted from explosions. Anyone looking at USS Lexington would see a ship that barely survived and barely functions. But that is exactly what the American Navy wants people to see. The American Navy wants USS Lexington to look like a ship that barely survived. The American Navy wants USS Lexington to look like a ship that barely functions. Because the American Navy is planning to transform USS Lexington into something else entirely. The American Navy is planning to transform USS Lexington into USS Yorktown. Senior Engineer Thomas Berry receives his orders. Berry is the chief engineer responsible for Lexington's reconstruction. Berry is the man who will oversee the transformation. Berry is given sealed orders that specify exactly what must be done. The orders state, USS Lexington will be repaired. USS Lexington will be repainted. USS Lexington will be renamed. USS Lexington will become USS Yorktown in every way that matters to Japanese intelligence. Berry understands the significance of the task. Berry understands that this is not merely ship repair. This is historical falsification. This is creation of a false identity. This is weaponization of deception at a military scale. Berry gathers his engineering team. Berry tells the team members that they are sworn to absolute secrecy. Berry tells them that discussing this project with anyone outside the team will result in court-martial. Berry tells them that this project is the most classified operation of the war. Berry tells them that their work will change the course of the war. The work begins immediately. The first priority, repair the structural damage. The hull must be watertight. The engine systems must function. The electrical systems must be restored. The teams work around the clock. The teams work in 3 shifts. The teams work with American ingenuity and American speed. But at the same time that structural repairs proceed, the identity transformation begins. Workers carefully remove the identification numbers from the hull. Workers sand away the letters that spell USS Lexington. Workers prepare the hull for new identification. Workers prepare the superstructure for new nameplates. Workers prepare the entire ship for a new identity. The repainting begins. Gray paint covers the entire exterior. Gray paint covers the superstructure. Gray paint covers the hull. Gray paint covers the identification numbers. Gray paint covers the evidence of combat. Gray paint covers the history of USS Lexington. New identification numbers are painted on the hull. The numbers that appear are the numbers of USS Yorktown. New nameplates are installed. The nameplate reads, USS Yorktown. The ship's identity changes, not through any fundamental alteration, but through cosmetic transformation. The ship is still the same ship physically. The ship is the same ship mechanically. The ship is the same ship structurally, but the ship is a different ship legally. The ship is a different ship officially. The ship is a different ship in the eyes of intelligence analysis. Thomas Berry walks across the flight deck and observes the transformation. Berry sees a ship that is becoming another ship. Berry sees an identity that is being erased and replaced. Berry sees history being rewritten in real time. Berry understands the audacity of what is occurring. Berry understands that no military force has ever attempted this before. Berry understands that if this deception works, it will fundamentally change how modern militaries think about naval power and identity. The workers paint the new hull identification numbers. The numbers are USS Yorktown's hull identification number. The numbers are painted precisely. The numbers are painted in the exact style that would appear on a real USS Yorktown. The numbers are painted in a way that would appear completely authentic in aerial reconnaissance photographs. The superstructure is reconfigured. Some damage to the superstructure is repaired. Some damage to the superstructure is left partially visible, visible enough to suggest that the ship has been damaged and repaired, but not so damaged as to suggest the ship is non-functional. The goal is to present a ship that appears to be USS Yorktown after suffering damage and undergoing hasty repairs. The flight deck is partially repaired. The flight deck shows evidence of bomb damage that has been repaired. The flight deck shows evidence of wear. The flight deck shows evidence of heavy use. The flight deck looks exactly like a ship that was damaged in combat and has been rushed back into service. By the seventh day, the external transformation is complete. USS Lexington no longer exists visually. USS Yorktown exists. The ship that sits in dry dock is USS Yorktown. The ship that will return to combat is USS Yorktown. The ship that will participate in future battles is USS Yorktown. But the crew knows the truth. The crew knows that they are serving on USS Lexington. The crew knows that the ship is a fraud. The crew knows that their ship's name has been changed. The crew knows that their ship's identity has been falsified. The crew has been sworn to secrecy. The crew understands that this secret is vital to American naval strategy. Captain Sherman addresses the crew. Sherman stands on the flight deck of the ship that is now officially USS Yorktown, but is really USS Lexington. Sherman looks at the sailors who have served on Lexington and will continue to serve on what they must call Yorktown. Sherman speaks with absolute clarity about what must happen next. Sherman says, "You are now serving on USS Yorktown. That is your ship's official designation. That is the name that appears on all official documents. That is the name that will appear in all official records. That is the name that will be transmitted in all official communications. Your ship is USS Yorktown. You must believe this. You must act this. You must speak this. If Japanese intelligence discovers that you are not USS Yorktown, if Japanese intelligence discovers that you are actually USS Lexington, then the entire deception collapses. If the deception collapses, then this ship will be hunted as a high-priority target. If this ship is hunted, then this ship will likely be sunk. If this ship is sunk, then all of you will die." Sherman pauses. Sherman allows the weight of these words to settle on the crew. Sherman continues, "You are defending USS Yorktown. You are defending American naval strategy. You are defending the Pacific Fleet's capacity to wage war. You are doing this by lying. You are doing this by pretending to be a ship you are not. You are doing this by helping create an illusion so complete that an entire nation's military intelligence service will believe it. I will not lie to you about the difficulty of this task. I will not lie to you about the moral complexity, but I will tell you this. What you are about to do will save American lives. Your deception will prevent Japanese forces from correctly identifying American naval strength. Your deception will confuse Japanese strategic planning. Your deception will contribute to American victory. Your deception matters. The crew understands. The crew accepts the assignment. The crew accepts the deception. The crew accepts the false identity. 3 days later, USS Yorktown, which is really USS Lexington, leaves dry dock. USS Yorktown sails out of Pearl Harbor. USS Yorktown heads toward the Pacific. USS Yorktown is ready for combat. USS Yorktown is ready to wage war under false identity. USS Yorktown is ready to change history. In Tokyo, Japanese intelligence receives reports. Japanese intelligence analysts read the reports. The reports state that USS Yorktown has been sighted leaving Pearl Harbor. USS Yorktown has been repaired faster than expected. USS Yorktown is returning to combat. Japanese intelligence analysts study the reports. Japanese intelligence analysts note the rapid recovery of USS Yorktown. Japanese intelligence analysts conclude that American ship repair capabilities are more robust than previously believed. But Japanese intelligence analysts do not know the truth. Japanese intelligence analysts do not know that USS Yorktown is really USS Lexington. Japanese intelligence analysts do not know that one ship has been transformed into another ship. Japanese intelligence analysts do not know that American naval identity has been falsified. Admiral Takeyu Takagi, commander of Japanese naval forces in the Pacific, reads the intelligence reports. Takagi studies the reports carefully. Takagi makes note that USS Yorktown is operational. Takagi calculates American naval strength based on the assumption that USS Yorktown exists. Takagi makes strategic decisions based on false information. Takagi makes strategic decisions that will ultimately contribute to Japanese defeat. All because Takagi believes one ship is a different ship than it actually is. All because Takagi believes the lie that has been painted onto the hull of USS Lexington. June 1942, the Battle of Midway. This battle will determine the naval balance of power in the Pacific Ocean. This battle will decide whether Japan or America will control the Pacific. This battle will be the pivotal moment of the entire war in the Pacific. USS Yorktown, which is really USS Lexington, participates in the battle. The ship that was renamed carries aircraft. The ship that was repainted carries 1,300 sailors. The ship that was given a false identity carries the hopes of the American Navy. The ship that was transformed launches strike aircraft against the Japanese fleet. The Japanese forces at Midway include 4 aircraft carriers. The Japanese carriers are the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The Japanese carriers have dominated the Pacific. The Japanese carriers have sunk numerous American ships. The Japanese carriers have never faced a serious opponent. American reconnaissance aircraft locate the Japanese carriers. American dive bombers are launched. American dive bombers attack the Japanese carriers. Japanese anti-aircraft fire is intense. American pilots are killed. But some American dive bombers penetrate the Japanese air defense. Some American dive bombers reach their targets. Some American dive bombers release their payloads. USS Yorktown, the renamed USS Lexington, provides fighter cover for the American strike aircraft. USS Yorktown's Wildcat fighters intercept Japanese combat air patrol. USS Yorktown's Wildcat fighters engage Japanese Zero fighters. The battle rages above the ocean. Japanese and American aircraft fall from the sky. Japanese and American pilots die. The battle is fierce and desperate. Japanese reconnaissance aircraft report the location of American carriers. Japanese intelligence reports indicate that at least one American carrier is in the Midway area. Japanese intelligence reports identify the carrier as USS Yorktown. Japanese pilots are ordered to attack USS Yorktown specifically, but the Japanese pilots do not know what they are really attacking. The Japanese pilots do not know that USS Yorktown is really USS Lexington. The Japanese pilots do not know that they are attacking a ship that they have already tried to sink and failed. The Japanese pilots do not know that the ship they are targeting has come back from the dead with a new identity. Japanese dive bombers attack the carrier that is officially USS Yorktown. The attack is intense. The attack is coordinated. The attack involves multiple waves of Japanese aircraft. Anti-aircraft fire erupts from the American carrier. American fighters intercept the dive bombers, but some dive bombers penetrate the defense. A Japanese dive bomber releases its bomb. The bomb falls from the sky. The bomb descends toward the flight deck of USS Yorktown. The bomb strikes the flight deck. The explosion engulfs the deck in smoke and fire. American sailors are killed. The flight deck is cratered. Aircraft are damaged. USS Yorktown is hit. USS Yorktown, which is really USS Lexington, is damaged again. The ship that was already damaged in the Coral Sea and has been repaired is now damaged again. The ship that was thought to be dead is wounded but not killed. But the ship fights on. USS Yorktown remains in the battle. USS Yorktown continues to launch aircraft. USS Yorktown continues to provide anti-aircraft fire. USS Yorktown, under false identity, contributes to the American victory at Midway. Japanese aircraft attack USS Yorktown repeatedly. Japanese pilots believe they are attacking USS Yorktown. Japanese pilots do not realize they are attacking USS Lexington. Japanese intelligence reports confirm that USS Yorktown has been damaged. Japanese intelligence reports confirm that USS Yorktown remains in operation. Japanese intelligence does not comprehend that USS Yorktown is really USS Lexington resurrected. The Battle of Midway rages for 3 days. By the end of the 3 days, 4 Japanese carriers have been sunk. The Japanese have lost hundreds of aircraft. The Japanese have lost thousands of pilots. The American forces have achieved a strategic victory. The American forces have turned the tide of the Pacific War. The American forces have won the battle, but Japanese intelligence remains confused. Japanese intelligence receives reports about USS Yorktown. Japanese intelligence receives reports confirming that USS Yorktown participated in the battle and survived. Japanese intelligence makes calculations based on the assumption that USS Yorktown participated in the battle. Japanese intelligence makes strategic assessments based on false identity. Japanese intelligence does not know that USS Yorktown is really USS Lexington. In the Japanese Naval Intelligence Office in Tokyo, analysts study reconnaissance photographs. The photographs show an American carrier at Midway. The photographs show carrier markings. The photographs show silhouette characteristics. The photographs appear to be USS Yorktown. Japanese analysts conclude that USS Yorktown participated in the Battle of Midway. But other reports come in. Other Japanese intelligence sources report that USS Yorktown has been damaged. Other reports confirm that USS Yorktown was damaged in previous battles and is being repaired in Pearl Harbor. Other reports suggest that USS Yorktown could not have participated in the Battle of Midway because USS Yorktown was undergoing repairs. The contradiction is noted. The contradiction is studied. The contradiction is analyzed, but the contradiction cannot be resolved. The confusion deepens. The Japanese intelligence service cannot determine whether USS Yorktown exists in a single form or in multiple simultaneous forms. Admiral Takagi reads the conflicting intelligence reports. Takagi studies the reports carefully. Takagi tries to reconcile the contradictory information. Takagi cannot reconcile the information. Takagi makes a decision. USS Yorktown must have been repaired extremely rapidly and sent back to combat. Takagi makes a note. American ship repair capabilities exceed previous estimates. Takagi revises his assessment of American naval strength. Takagi does not know the truth. Takagi does not know that USS Yorktown is really USS Lexington. Takagi does not know that one ship is appearing as two ships in intelligence reports. Takagi does not know that American naval identity has been falsified so completely that Japanese intelligence cannot distinguish reality from fiction. The paradox of USS Yorktown deepens. On one hand, USS Yorktown is confirmed as participating in the Battle of Midway. On the other hand, USS Yorktown is confirmed as being damaged and requiring repair. On one hand, USS Yorktown should be in dry dock. On the other hand, USS Yorktown is in combat. On one hand, the identity is consistent. On the other hand, the timeline is contradictory. Japanese intelligence creates a hypothesis. Perhaps the Americans have repaired USS Yorktown with unprecedented speed. Perhaps American shipbuilding capabilities have improved dramatically. Perhaps USS Yorktown was damaged only lightly and could be returned to combat within days instead of months. The hypothesis is transmitted to Japanese strategic command. The hypothesis influences Japanese strategic planning. The hypothesis leads Japanese command to believe that American naval capacity is greater than previously estimated. The hypothesis leads Japanese command to make conservative strategic decisions. The hypothesis leads Japanese command to believe that attacking American positions will be more difficult than expected. All of this confusion and hypothesis stems from one simple fact. USS Yorktown is not USS Yorktown. USS Yorktown is USS Lexington in disguise. USS Yorktown is one ship living under two identities. USS Yorktown is a ghost that has become real. USS Yorktown is living proof that in war, identity is an illusion that can be weaponized. The Japanese do not know this. The Japanese intelligence service believes what the paint job and nameplate tell them to believe. The Japanese intelligence service does not have the framework to understand that one ship could be transformed into another ship. The Japanese intelligence service assumes that the ship they see is the ship it claims to be. But Captain Sherman knows the truth. Captain Sherman knows that USS Yorktown is USS Lexington. Captain Sherman knows that the transformation was successful. Captain Sherman knows that Japanese intelligence has been successfully deceived. Captain Sherman knows that the confusion Japanese intelligence feels is exactly the confusion Sherman wanted to create. Sherman writes in his log, "The ship that was supposedly dead has returned to life under a new identity. The enemy believes this new identity. The enemy is confused by the contradictions in intelligence reports. The enemy is making strategic decisions based on false information. The deception has succeeded." USS Yorktown, which is really USS Lexington, has changed the outcome of the Battle of Midway not through firepower, but through falsified identity. This ship is proof that in modern naval warfare, the enemy's perception of your strength is more important than your actual strength. Sherman understands the profound implication of what has occurred. Sherman understands that the American Navy has successfully weaponized deception on a scale that has never been attempted before. Sherman understands that if this deception can be maintained, then American forces will have a strategic advantage that goes beyond firepower and beyond numbers. American forces will have an advantage in the domain of perception. American forces will have an advantage in the domain of identity. American forces will have an advantage in the domain of information warfare. The Battle of Midway ends. The American forces have won. The Japanese forces have lost. The turning point of the Pacific War has occurred, and the turning point has been influenced by the transformation of USS Lexington into USS Yorktown. The turning point has been influenced by the successful deception of Japanese intelligence. The turning point has been influenced by the creation of a ghost ship that was more real in Japanese minds than in physical reality. July 1942. Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, USS Yorktown, which is really USS Lexington, returns to dry dock for repairs. The ship that was damaged at Midway requires restoration. The ship that was renamed requires maintenance. The ship that was transformed requires continued concealment. The repairs are conducted in secrecy. The repairs are conducted with only a handful of officers aware of the true identity of the ship. The repairs are conducted while maintaining the fiction that the ship is USS Yorktown. The repairs are conducted while strengthening the deception, rather than revealing it. The ship's combat record is being recorded in official documents. The documents record that USS Yorktown participated in the Battle of Midway. The documents record that USS Yorktown suffered damage. The documents record that USS Yorktown is being repaired. The documents do not mention that USS Yorktown is really USS Lexington. The documents present a false history, as if it were real history. Captain Sherman meets with the shipyard commander. Sherman explains what must be done. Sherman explains that the ship's identity must be maintained in all official records. Sherman explains that there must be absolute consistency in the falsified record. Sherman explains that no evidence of the true identity of the ship must appear in official documentation. The shipyard commander understands the implications. The shipyard commander understands that he is being ordered to falsify military records on a massive scale. The shipyard commander understands that he is being ordered to participate in systematic deception. The shipyard commander understands that what is being requested is not merely ship repair, but historical falsification. The shipyard commander accepts the assignment. The shipyard commander begins implementing procedures that will ensure the false identity is maintained in all official records. The shipyard commander creates multiple sets of documentation. One set of documentation, the official set, records the ship as USS Yorktown. One set of documentation, the classified set, records the ship as USS Lexington. The two sets of documentation are never allowed to come into contact. The two sets are maintained in separate, secure locations. The two sets are never cross-referenced. The official ship's log records events as if USS Yorktown experienced them. The official log records that USS Yorktown participated in the Battle of Midway. The official log records that USS Yorktown received damage from enemy aircraft. The official log records that USS Yorktown is undergoing repairs. The official log creates a seamless, false narrative of a ship named USS Yorktown. But in the classified documentation, another story is told. In the classified records, the true identity is revealed. In the classified records, it is recorded that USS Lexington, damaged in the Coral Sea, was repaired and renamed. In the classified records, it is recorded that USS Lexington is operating under the false identity of USS Yorktown. In the classified records, the deception is explicitly documented for future historians who will have security clearance high enough to access classified files. The distinction between official and classified records creates a paradox. The official records present USS Yorktown as a genuine ship with a continuous history. The classified records present USS Yorktown as a fraudulent identity assumed by USS Lexington. Both records are accurate. Both records are truthful. Both records document the same reality from different perspectives, but the problem is that most of the world will only ever see the official records. Most historians will only ever see the official records. Most naval officers will only ever see the official records. The classified records will remain sealed for decades. The true story will remain hidden for decades. The deception will become historical fact through the simple mechanism of selective revelation. Sherman understands this. Sherman knows that future historians will believe that USS Yorktown existed as a discrete entity. Sherman knows that future historians will create narratives about USS Yorktown that are fundamentally false. Sherman knows that the deception he has created will persist beyond the war. Sherman knows that the deception will persist into historical record. Sherman knows that history itself will be falsified by the deception. But Sherman also understands something else. Sherman understands that maintaining this deception is vital to American naval strategy. Sherman understands that Japanese intelligence must continue to believe that USS Yorktown is a genuine ship. Sherman understands that Japanese strategic planning must continue to be based on the belief that USS Yorktown exists. Sherman understands that the continued success of this deception is worth the cost of falsified historical records. The battle between American naval strategy and historical truth has been decided in favor of naval strategy. History will be sacrificed for military advantage. Truth will be sacrificed for operational success. USS Yorktown, which is really USS Lexington, completes repairs. USS Yorktown is returned to operational status. USS Yorktown prepares for additional combat operations. USS Yorktown enters service again, under false identity. USS Yorktown is ready to continue the deception. But something else is happening simultaneously, something that will complicate the deception further. Real USS Yorktown, the original USS Yorktown that was damaged before the Coral Sea operation, is also being repaired. The real USS Yorktown is also being returned to operational status. The real USS Yorktown is also preparing to return to combat. This creates a new crisis. There is now a real USS Yorktown and a false USS Yorktown. There are now two ships claiming the same identity. The original USS Yorktown that was damaged and is being repaired. The false USS Yorktown that is really USS Lexington. But only one of them can have the name USS Yorktown. Only one of them can bear the identification numbers of USS Yorktown. Only one of them can be the official USS Yorktown. American Naval Command faces a critical decision. American Naval Command must decide which USS Yorktown will maintain the false identity. Which USS Yorktown will be officially designated? Which USS Yorktown will appear in official records? The decision is made. USS Lexington, the renamed USS Yorktown, will remain USS Yorktown. The original USS Yorktown will need to be something else. The original USS Yorktown will need to assume a different identity or be designated differently for purposes of record-keeping. The confusion deepens. The deception multiplies. The falsification of identity compounds. American naval records become increasingly complex and contradictory. Official records begin to show inconsistencies that cannot be fully explained without revealing the deception. Sherman documents the situation in his classified records. The deception of USS Lexington's transformation into USS Yorktown has been successful beyond expectations. However, the continued existence of the original USS Yorktown creates complications. We now have two ships that could be designated USS Yorktown. We now have two ships that could claim the same identity. This situation will require continued management and coordination. The falsification of records will need to become increasingly sophisticated to maintain the deception while accommodating the existence of both ships. Future historians will be confused by apparent contradictions in official records. This confusion is acceptable because national security requirements supersede historical clarity. The situation is managed through administrative procedures. The situation is managed through careful documentation. The situation is managed through compartmentalization of information. The situation is managed through the creation of multiple layers of classification. The situation is managed, but never resolved. The fundamental contradiction between the two USS Yorktowns remains unresolved. But in the minds of Japanese intelligence officers, there is no confusion. Japanese intelligence officers believe in a single USS Yorktown. Japanese intelligence officers record observations of USS Yorktown in their intelligence summaries. Japanese intelligence officers make strategic decisions based on the existence of USS Yorktown. Japanese intelligence officers do not know about the USS Yorktown that is really USS Lexington. Japanese intelligence officers do not know about the original USS Yorktown that is being repaired. Japanese intelligence officers do not know about the deception that is becoming increasingly complex. For Japanese intelligence, reality is simple. USS Yorktown exists. USS Yorktown participated in the Battle of Midway. USS Yorktown is being repaired. USS Yorktown will return to combat. The Japanese see what they expect to see. The Japanese believe what they are told to believe. The Japanese are deceived by the simplicity of their own assumptions. But inside American naval records, the truth is becoming increasingly complicated. Inside American naval records, the situation is becoming increasingly contradictory. Inside American naval records, deception is being layered upon deception. Inside American naval records, history is being falsified in real time. October 1942. The Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands. USS Yorktown, which is really USS Lexington, participates in another major naval engagement. The ship that was born in the Coral Sea, died in the Coral Sea, was resurrected as a false identity, and, fought at Midway, now faces a new test. The ship that has already defied death once faces Japanese aircraft once more. Japanese reconnaissance aircraft locate the American carrier task force. Japanese pilots are briefed. The pilots are told their target, USS Yorktown. The pilots believe they are attacking USS Yorktown. The pilots do not know they are attacking USS Lexington for the second time in the war. The pilots do not know that the ship they are targeting has already been attacked and has supposedly sunk. Japanese dive bombers attack USS Yorktown. Japanese torpedo bombers attack USS Yorktown. Japanese aircraft release their weapons. Explosions engulf the flight deck. Fire spreads through the superstructure. Anti-aircraft guns return fire. American fighters intercept incoming aircraft. The battle is fierce and desperate. USS Yorktown is hit multiple times. USS Yorktown receives torpedo damage. USS Yorktown receives bomb damage. USS Yorktown is engulfed in smoke. USS Yorktown appears to be in serious trouble. USS Yorktown appears to be dying. But USS Yorktown does not die immediately. USS Yorktown remains afloat. USS Yorktown continues to function. USS Yorktown continues to launch aircraft. USS Yorktown continues to provide anti-aircraft defense. But the damage is accumulating. The ship is burning. The ship is sinking. The ship is approaching the point where it cannot be saved. Captain Sherman receives damage reports. The damage reports indicate catastrophic structural failure. The damage reports indicate that the flooding cannot be controlled. The damage reports indicate that USS Yorktown cannot be saved. Sherman makes the decision. USS Yorktown must be abandoned. The crew must evacuate. The ship must be allowed to sink. But before Sherman issues the order to abandon ship, Sherman understands something profound. Sherman understands that USS Yorktown is really USS Lexington. Sherman understands that USS Lexington has survived once before. Sherman understands that USS Lexington will not survive a second time. Sherman understands that the ship that was resurrected once cannot be resurrected twice. Sherman gives the order to abandon ship. The crew evacuates. The sailors leave USS Yorktown, the ship that was USS Lexington, the ship that was renamed, the ship that was transformed. The ship is abandoned to its fate. USS Yorktown sinks slowly. The ship that was supposed to be dead and was brought back to life dies again. The ship that was renamed and rebooted dies under its false name. The ship that deceived an entire nation's military intelligence service goes down. The ship disappears beneath the ocean. Japanese pilots report the sinking. Japanese intelligence is informed. Japanese intelligence records. USS Yorktown has been sunk. USS Yorktown is confirmed destroyed. USS Yorktown no longer exists. Japanese intelligence makes note in official records. USS Yorktown was damaged multiple times and finally sunk. But American intelligence knows something different. American intelligence knows that USS Yorktown was really USS Lexington. American intelligence knows that USS Lexington has now been sunk twice in the war. American intelligence knows that the deception has come to an end. The ghost ship has finally been laid to rest. In Tokyo, Admiral Takagi receives confirmation of USS Yorktown's sinking. Takagi records in official Japanese intelligence summaries, USS Yorktown has been destroyed. The American carrier that was repaired so rapidly after Midway has been sunk. The American carrier that seemed to have miraculous recovery capabilities has finally been overcome. But Takagi does not know that he is recording the sinking of USS Lexington, not USS Yorktown. Takagi does not know that he is recording the death of a ship that has already supposedly died once before. Takagi does not know that the USS Yorktown he destroyed is really USS Lexington, wearing a false identity. In Pearl Harbor, American naval intelligence updates its records. The official records record that USS Yorktown has been sunk at the Battle of Santa Cruz Islands. The official records note, USS Yorktown participated in 2 major battles, Midway and Santa Cruz, before being sunk. The official records create a seamless narrative of USS Yorktown as a distinct historical entity. But in the classified records, a different story is told. In the classified records, it is noted that USS Yorktown, which was really USS Lexington, has been sunk. In the classified records, it is noted that the deception has come to an end. In the classified records, it is noted that USS Lexington has been destroyed twice, once in the Coral Sea as USS Lexington, and once at Santa Cruz as USS Yorktown. The duality of records creates a paradox that will confuse historians for decades. The official records will present USS Yorktown as a single, coherent ship with a clear combat history. The classified records will reveal that USS Yorktown was a false identity assumed by USS Lexington. The two narratives cannot be reconciled without understanding the deception. But most historians will never access the classified records. Most historians will work only with the official records. Most historians will believe that USS Yorktown existed as a genuine, distinct entity. Most historians will create narratives about USS Yorktown that are fundamentally false. Most historians will not understand that USS Yorktown was a ghost, a ship that was renamed and given false identity to deceive Japanese intelligence. Sherman survives. Sherman is rescued from the ocean. Sherman returns to Pearl Harbor. Sherman is debriefed about the sinking of USS Yorktown. Sherman provides official statements that USS Yorktown was sunk by Japanese aircraft at the Battle of Santa Cruz Islands. Sherman creates an official narrative that USS Yorktown was a brave ship that fought to the end. But Sherman also meets with intelligence officers. Sherman provides classified statements that USS Yorktown was really USS Lexington. Sherman explains the deception. Sherman explains that one ship had been transformed into another ship. Sherman explains that the deception successfully confused Japanese intelligence. Sherman explains that the deception contributed to American victories at both Midway and Santa Cruz. The intelligence officers understand. The intelligence officers recognize the brilliance of the deception and the complexity of the false historical record that has been created. The intelligence officers recognize that maintaining two separate sets of historical records, one official and false, one classified and true, is the only way to protect the secret while still documenting what actually occurred. Sherman is debriefed further. Sherman provides recommendations for future deception operations. Sherman recommends that American naval forces continue to employ similar tactics, transforming ships through renaming and repainting to deceive enemy intelligence. Sherman recommends that American forces continue to maintain dual sets of historical records, one public and false, one classified and true. The recommendations are filed away. The deception operation is officially concluded. USS Yorktown is officially dead. But the lessons of USS Yorktown, the lessons of USS Lexington, are studied by American military strategists. The lessons of how one ship can deceive an entire nation's intelligence service will influence American military strategy for decades to come. The ocean where USS Yorktown sank holds the remains of USS Lexington. The ocean where the renamed ship was finally destroyed holds the evidence of the deception. The physical ship is gone. The material ship is destroyed. But the historical ship, the ghost USS Yorktown that existed only in Japanese minds and in falsified American records, that ship lives on. That ship lives on in history books. That ship lives on in intelligence analyses. That ship lives on as a perfect example of how deception can be weaponized at a strategic level. That ship lives on as proof that in modern warfare, identity is malleable. That ship lives on as proof that one ship can be two ships. That ship lives on as proof that history itself can be falsified when national security is at stake. 1942. The war continues. USS Lexington is officially recorded as sunk twice, once in the Coral Sea as USS Lexington, once at Santa Cruz as USS Yorktown. Two separate sinkings, two separate dates, two separate identities, but one ship. Decades pass. The war ends. 1945. American forces defeat Japan. American forces defeat Germany. The war concludes. USS Yorktown becomes a historical artifact. USS Yorktown enters the historical record. USS Yorktown is studied by military historians. USS Yorktown is written about in naval histories. But historians do not know the complete truth. Historians do not know that USS Yorktown was really USS Lexington. Historians do not know that one ship lived under two identities. Historians do not know that a ship supposedly destroyed in the Coral Sea was resurrected as a different ship. Historians create narratives about USS Yorktown based on official records. Historians create narratives that are fundamentally false. 1950. A military history is published. The history describes USS Yorktown as a brave American carrier that participated in two major battles before being sunk. The history creates a seamless narrative of USS Yorktown as a heroic ship. The history does not mention USS Lexington's role. The history does not mention the transformation. The history presents false information as historical fact. 1960. Another history is published. This history also describes USS Yorktown's battles and sinking. This history also treats USS Yorktown as a genuine, distinct entity. This history also contributes to the false narrative about USS Yorktown. 1970, 1980, 1990. Decades of historical scholarship are built on the false premise that USS Yorktown was a genuine ship. Decades of naval historians cite official records. Decades of naval historians reference USS Yorktown as if it were a real, distinct entity. Decades of naval historians create an alternate history based on falsified records. But in 1996, something changes. American government decides to declassify certain naval records. American government decides that certain wartime deceptions can now be revealed. American government releases classified documents about USS Lexington. American government releases classified documents about the transformation of USS Lexington into USS Yorktown. Military historians receive access to the classified documents. Military historians begin to understand the deception. Military historians begin to realize that USS Yorktown was not USS Yorktown. Military historians begin to understand that one ship had been transformed into another. Military historians begin to realize that decades of historical scholarship was based on falsified records. Historians begin to write new histories. New histories attempt to explain the deception. New histories attempt to correct the false narrative, but the false narrative has already become embedded in historical consciousness. The false narrative has already been repeated in dozens of books. The false narrative has already become accepted as historical truth. Some historians struggle with the implications. Some historians recognize that they have been deceived by official records. Some historians recognize that historical truth and official records are not always aligned. Some historians recognize that governments can falsify history through selective classification and selective revelation of information. Admiral Takagi dies in 1946. Takagi never learns the truth. Takagi believes until his death that he successfully destroyed USS Yorktown. Takagi never learns that USS Yorktown was a false identity assumed by USS Lexington. Takagi never learns that he was deceived by paint and nameplate. Takagi never learns that one ship had lived two identities in the Pacific War. Captain Frederick Sherman survives the war. Sherman remains in the Navy. Sherman rises through the ranks. Sherman eventually retires as a rear admiral. Sherman dies in 1981. Sherman carries the secret of USS Yorktown, USS Lexington to his grave. Sherman never publicly reveals the deception. Sherman maintains the secret for nearly 40 years. But in declassified interviews conducted in the 1990s, Sherman speaks about USS Yorktown. Sherman explains the deception. Sherman explains how USS Lexington was transformed into USS Yorktown. Sherman explains how the transformation succeeded in deceiving Japanese intelligence. Sherman explains how one ship influenced the flow of a naval war through falsified identity. Sherman's explanation becomes part of the historical record. Sherman's classified interviews are declassified. Sherman's testimony becomes evidence in the reconstruction of the true history of USS Yorktown, USS Lexington. Historians begin to revise their understanding. Historians begin to understand that USS Yorktown was a ghost. USS Yorktown was a fictional identity. USS Yorktown was a deception that became historical fact. USS Yorktown was a ship that never truly existed, but that influenced history nonetheless. The paradox is profound. USS Yorktown did not exist, yet USS Yorktown participated in battles. USS Yorktown suffered damage. USS Yorktown died. USS Yorktown's supposedly death in the official records is the death of USS Lexington's second identity. USS Yorktown's supposed life in the official records is USS Lexington's life under false identity. The implications extend beyond maritime history. The deception of USS Yorktown demonstrates a fundamental principle of information warfare. Perception determines strategy. Japanese intelligence perceived USS Yorktown as a genuine threat. Japanese intelligence made strategic decisions based on this perception. Japanese military strategy was influenced by a ship that did not exist. Modern military theorists study USS Yorktown/USS Lexington as a case study in deception operations. Modern military theorists recognize that the transformation of USS Lexington into USS Yorktown was a strategic deception operation conducted at the highest level. Modern military theorists recognize that civilian identity can be weaponized. Modern military theorists recognize that falsified records can influence historical outcomes. But civilian historians struggle with the ethical implications. Civilian historians recognize that governments falsified records. Civilian historians recognize that official historical documents are not always truthful. Civilian historians recognize that deception can persist beyond the war that generated it. Civilian historians recognize that the present understanding of USS Yorktown is false. Some historians advocate for correcting all historical references to USS Yorktown. Some historians argue that USS Yorktown should be identified in all modern histories as USS Lexington. Some historians argue for complete transparency about the deception. Other historians argue that the deception should remain in official records as a historical curiosity. Other historians argue that maintaining the false narrative serves historical continuity. The debate continues. The historical record remains partially false and partially true. The official records record USS Yorktown as a genuine, distinct entity. The classified records record USS Yorktown as USS Lexington in disguise. The contradiction between the official and classified records remains unresolved. In the end, USS Yorktown, USS Lexington, demonstrates a fundamental truth about modern warfare and modern history. Identity is malleable. In warfare, a ship can be two ships. In records, history can be falsified to serve strategic objectives. In intelligence analysis, perception determines reality. The ship that was USS Lexington. The ship that became USS Yorktown. The ship that died, twice, under two different names. The ship that influenced the Battle of Midway through false identity. The ship that lived a double life in a single body. The ship that was ghost twice over, first as USS Yorktown, pretending to be real, then as USS Lexington, pretending to be USS Yorktown. This is the legacy of USS Yorktown. This is the legacy of the ship that was not. This is the legacy of American naval deception in World War II. This is the legacy of how one ship, through transformation and falsified identity, changed the course of a naval war. This is the legacy of how history itself can be falsified when national security interests demand it. The ocean still holds the wreck of USS Yorktown/USS Lexington. The wreck lies on the ocean floor. The wreck is what remains of the deception. The physical ship is destroyed, but the historical ship, the ghost USS Yorktown that existed only in the minds of Japanese intelligence officers and in falsified American records, That ship lives on. That ship lives on in historical texts. That ship lives on as proof that in modern warfare, identity is a weapon. That ship lives on as proof that one ship can defeat an enemy through deception rather than firepower. That ship lives on as the perfect example of how information warfare shapes the outcome of kinetic warfare.